Barbara Mitchell grew up in the south side of Chicago and eventually lived there with her husband. Barbara exclaimed how she always felt really guilty for leaving the south side of Chicago and moving to the suburbs because she felt like she wasn't really helping civil rights.
I flunked civil rights because we had 3 children. I wanted them to be able to walk to school and walk home without riding shotgun. And I flunked. And I ran as fast as I could. There was what they called white flight because the real estate companies would facilitate it.
The term white flight she talks about basically refers to large groups of white people leaving integrated urban areas to go to a predominantly white suburb. In Barbara's case, she felt her move was due to social pressure and doing what was best for her family.
I don't know anyone that I know that stayed there.
Do you have any specific memories about Martin Luther King?
60s, I can remember hearing Martin Luther King speak on the village green in Winnetka. And that was after we moved here.
In the summer of 1965, a North Shore Summer Project organization was formed from a group of mothers in Winnetka who were concerned that their kids and others in Winnetka weren't growing up with any diversity. One of the things this group did was to invite Martin Luther King to speak, and it drew a crowd of about 9,000 people in the Village Green in Winnetka. Interestingly enough, Barbara did not know the intentions of the organization or the speech, and did not know that they were pro-diversity in Winnetka, just like her. Barbara's opinion was that she didn't really understand why they gave the speech in Winnetka, where practically everyone was white. She felt that MLK's expertise would have been better directed in Highland Park or Evanston.
Because I would say, well, isn't it sweet, all these people in Winnetka hearing Martin Luther King about civil rights? Of course, we're all for civil rights. But living the dream of civil rights is different from talking about it. You know, I thought, well, if you're really a civil rights person, you either go to Evanston or Hyde Park, because those people are serious about their civil rights and being diverse, and they always have been.
Even though Barbara didn't quite get why the speech was in Winnetka, she truly loved MLK and describes her heartbreak and fear when he was assassinated.
And we turned on the television, and Martin Luther King had been shot. And it was terrible. Because then I thought, oh my God, everybody is going to go out and torch the whole city. Well, it didn't happen to the whole city, but I was so afraid that it was just going to be a torrent of violence. Because that was so far from what Martin Luther King wanted. But the fact that some maniac shot him, and I can't remember still, who did shoot him?
Did you have any family or friends who fought in the Vietnam War?
I had 2 cousins that were in Vietnam because my husband served in Korea. And after Korea was first. And then came Vietnam after that. But with Korea, there was no recognition of anybody that served in Korea.
My question about the Vietnam War was quickly redirected to the Korean War by her. In 1950, South Korea's army poured into what is now known as North Korea's peninsula. Not soon after, America came in on South Korea's side to ensure another world war wouldn't happen. The war ended 3 years later, and American troops left. However, the conflict in Korea was still very much alive, so many Americans simply lost interest and stopped reading or listening to it. That's why it was given the name the Forgotten War.
Think of how they protested the Vietnam War, and I thought, we should have been protesting the Korean War. Because there was 50,000 casualties. Most of the people that Mitch went off with, second lieutenants, they didn't come back. So he was lucky.
Along with her husband Mitch serving in the war, she still thought that Korea should have gotten more recognition. When you were raising children, did the hippie movement kind of affect your roles in your life, or?
Definitely. Definitely. I played the banjo. I followed the folk singers. Well, they were hippies, but they were like almost hippies. But yeah, it was out there. It was really appealing because the music was good. um, the clothes we all had. I mean, I think my husband had a Nehru jacket. Oh, I had a wonderful embroidered vest. All that is lost now. But no, we definitely were affected by that. And
Barbara appreciated the hippie movement, but at the time of the movement, she was a grown adult and didn't really feel the full effect of the hippie movement. Even though Barbara wasn't out partying at music festivals or rallying, she still felt the effect of the hippie movement in small ways, like cooking, fashion, and even in her own family.
they did change a lot of things. I was big into organic long before it was fashionable. I used to make my own bread, granola. I'm telling you, my son. Are you giving my name? You are, aren't you?
Yes.
Well, forget it then. But we were touched by that.
Barbara got a little embarrassed and asked if her name was being used for the interview. It's funny that after all this talk about hippies, that it seemed like she was about to admit that her son himself was a hippie. Even though Barbara Mitchell has lived in the North Shore for most of her life, which is sometimes deemed as a bubble from the rest of the world, and even though she was raising her kids all during the 60s, she was still very much affected by so many of these notorious events in the 60s and has gained a true perspective on the 60s.